Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Northeast Non-League Show, episode 53, a Northern League special November review sponsored by Jade Bell and DJ Private Hire. Join us now, we have Den Bell of YouTube channel DB30 Sports TV, Blythe Town assistant Gav Fell, and Sunderland West End manager Paul Wardle. Lads, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
Pleasure, as always.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having
Excellent. As we always say about Northern League, not many two games on because of the weather, but always lots of chat about, lots always going on, breaking news, transfers. And that's where we're going to kind of start. I mean, as we said, with all the games that's been off during this month, it's hard to talk about results and kind of what's expected. Because I think only most games have played one or two games this month. But starting with yourself, Dan, I mean, the games that you've been to so far this season, which one would you say was your best game out of the games that you've been to?
Just in the Northern League, or generally speaking?
Yeah, the Northern League.
Okay, so I think the one that stands out has got to be Nefalleton versus Washington in a cup. I thought it was an unbelievable game, to be fair. I think Washi did themselves a lot of credit in that game, and I mean, obviously went into a 2-0 lead, and obviously it slipped away from them in the end, and the Division 1 sides obviously rallied as you'd maybe expect, but I think that's probably the one that in the Northern League definitely does stand out. But I've got to say as well, another one that was pretty enjoyable was the El Clevico, as I dubbed it, between Gisborough and Redcar Athletic. I thought that was a cracking game as well.
Yeah, some good games so far. And I think now the clubs are putting on so much for the fans as well. Like, say, the little sponsor deals that they've got. Blythe, like we said, we talked about on the last show, weren't we? With the sponsor stuff that they've got, and you go and have your little few drinks in the meal before games. And I mean, what's this so far this season, Dan? The games that you've been to, doing your video vlogs and stuff like that. What's the best ground that you've been to this season for hospitality, would you say?
Well, I always enjoy my visits to Northallerton. I've got to say, I always get sort of treated really well. I love the scrum there, like the burgers, absolutely yes. Gisborough as well, a really lovely bar at Gisborough. I like what Redcar Athletic are doing in terms of like constantly trying to build up the ground and what have you. So yeah, they're obviously, obviously all three of them are relatively local to me, but yeah, I've got to say like all of them are really good assets to the Northern League, and certainly grounds that wouldn't look out of place at maybe even a couple of leagues higher.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yourself, Gav, evening. Obviously sitting top now after a good 3-1 win last night against FC Hartlepool. How did that game go?
To be fair, I think the best way to describe it is we were clinical. I think we've had 5 opportunities in the game and we've scored 3. To be fair, I think credit where credit's due. FC Hartlepool were probably the best team we've played this season. Kept the ball really, really well. They were young. Didn't really give away the ball too much. I think if they had a little bit more kind of cutting edge up top, it could have been a whole different game. But yeah, it was like 3-1. I can see a lot of people going there, a lot of teams going there this season and kind of struggling, if I'm being honest with you, because like I said, they're a good side and they're well organised, and you can see the young lads and the fit. And we went 2-0 up, 2 good goals from our perspective in terms of G and Slats. And then we said at half time, first 15 minutes is really important in the second half, where we get it and we can probably put the game to bed. But they got it, and we had a bit of a game on our hands for about 10-15 minutes, and then they seemed to run out a little bit of ideas, and then we caught them on the break, got the 3rd goal, and that was pretty much done. But it was a really good win because they're a good side.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to get your thoughts on obviously the news from Division 2 that broke a couple of weeks ago, Blue Star, and obviously the management leaving and a lot of players leaving as well. Another ones left to go to Heaton tonight. I mean, what would you kind of make of how it all just quickly happened, and obviously the players and the management leaving so quick?
Listen, I guess from somebody who's sitting here thinking they're going to be our kind of one of the main rivals up at the top 4 or 5 in our league this season, you kind of sit there, rub your hands together and think, oh, I hope it takes them a hell of a long time to get it all sorted out. But when you think about it, the boys who have went in, both Nashi and Woody, I know them really, really well. They'll turn it around quickly. So fact of the matter is, it might cause them a few problems. It gets caused. I know they've drew 1 and they've lost 1 since. But lads who they're bringing in terms of like Larmouth and people like that, and Ryder and kind of the other lads who are signing. There's a few more in the offering. They'll get it sorted out, and they'll be probably just as strong as they were. But I feel for the boys who kind of have went out the other way in terms of Smithy and Bowser and Cuggs, the good footballing men. And ultimately they've got them promoted. They're sitting top of the league, so it's probably a hard one to take, right? Because I think if you're sitting fourth bottom, fifth bottom, and you've got a budget like they've got and players that they've got, then maybe you can understand why the decision would be made. But not when you're sitting top of the league and you've just been promoted. It's a real shame, but it happens. Northern League managers and Northern League chairmen, sometimes it's like a merry-go-round, and you kind of understand the decisions. And it's, like I said, to our boys and our club, like, look, that's one of the uncontrollables. We kind of control what other teams do and who they go after, and kind of the impact that them sort of decisions make. We just look after ourselves, and we'll try and capitalise on what we can. And like I say, we got a good result, which kind of put us back top of the league by 1 point against Bedlington and kind of 2 points against them. But we've got games in hands on both, so hopefully we can capitalise on it and hopefully kind of get a bit of breathing space, to be fair, because they're a good side.
Yeah, definitely. And even Paul, I was going to say, first time on the show, but you've been on plenty of the video vlogs before. I think you and Gav like the face non-league show now as well. But over yourself, Paul, I mean, sitting 16th at the moment, Southern West End, how's the season going so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've spoke previously on the blogs when we did it on Saturday. We came in sort of late, really late in the pre-season, so we sort of come in with a blank canvas. A lot of the players from last season had left, but we were left with 2 or 3 players. So it was really about rebuilding and trying to get as many players in as we could. There was a lot of players we were after who, obviously, the position Southern West End found themselves in last year weren't that keen on coming. So it's taken a while to rebuild and sort of get the players in we have. Over the last few weeks, the squad started to strengthen a lot. And we're quite happy with the squad at the minute. Sitting 16th, would like to be 2 or 3 places higher up. But again, from the position West End were in last year, we're in a much healthier position, both as a team, as a club, as a squad, and the backroom staff and the committee and everything. So touch wood, everything's going in the right direction at the moment.
Yeah, it's going well. Like I said, the game against Billingham Town, I know we tried very hard to push as much as we can. I think we got 150 down, which was really good on the day. But we always talk about, like you say, it's so close to the housing estates, right next to it. We need to try and get that support down as much as we can, and hopefully, like you say, get this when Sunderland's playing away. Just takes that one game, it's one to fall in love with the non-league football, doesn't it?
It does. It was a great day that day. Like you say, there was a lot more than we normally got that day. At the start of the season, we spoke about trying to get a lot of games on a Friday to see if that would generate any more revenue through the game and more fans there. But it's a case of having to agree with the away team as well, and a lot of them weren't keen on it. So we've had to go on Saturday games, and a lot of our games have fell when Sunderland's been at home, which doesn't help. Obviously, Sunderland getting the crowds and we're getting sort of what's left, you know.
Yeah, but hopefully, like you say, keep the crowds coming. Another Boxing Day, I'm really looking forward to that game. I think I'm going to even want to Mr. Newcastle game to come down and watch that one, which I didn't think I would say about loving me non-league football at the minute, man. You kind of beat it.
No, definitely not. Yeah, hopefully we'll get a big crowd Boxing Day. Everyone will have had a good drink on the Saturday. On the Christmas Day. And so just want to blow out on the Boxing Day and come and watch a bit of football.
Definitely, that was my plan. I said I wasn't going to Newcastle match to keep the White House, but she doesn't know that West End's playing around the corner, so that's really She's upstairs. She probably hears that. That's why I'm whispering. So, in getting back to the Division 1 in the Northern League, and start with yourself, Gav. At the minute, at the top of the league, a 2-horse race. It's starting to really open up now between Bishop and Shildon. Bishop played 3-1-3 November, scored 19 goals. Shildon played 3-1-2, drawn 1. Been 2 good months for the club. I mean, what's your thoughts on them at the moment?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, there's going to have to be a good team to get in between them two. I think ultimately the way they've started, I keep saying it's like the recipe for success is very much about scoring plenty of goals and conceding very little and have a goal difference. I think of 47 in Bishops and a goal difference of 42 at Shildon kind of tells you, when you look at kind of third place Berkeley, who are doing fantastically well with them being just promoted with a game in hand, but they've kind of they've got a goal difference of plus 12, so it's kind of looking ominous in terms of the kind of the Bishops and Shildon. It'll be between them two, but I've watched Bishops a few times. Obviously, we've drawn them in the FA Vars on Saturday, so kind of got out and watched them, and especially at home, they're frightening in terms of the way they play, and they've just got a very, very good, experienced, well-drilled, well-organised squad, and from that perspective, I think there's going to have to be a very good team to kind of finish above them. But you know what? Maybe the Christmas period in January and February, and the pitches aren't great, and the way that they like to play football, have they got a plan B? And like, we'll wait and see. Obviously, they've got the likes of Hender up front in terms of that, so they can go big and direct if they want to. But yeah, we'll see. They'll have to be a good team to get between them two, I think.
Definitely. And Dan, just behind that, the gap's opening up, as you just mentioned there. The third place now down to about, I think it was fourth, down to sixth. I think even now with Berkeley there, West Alton, who I must say has a great month. I was quite surprised. I know I was looking at the results, but I've never been looking at the league table lately, and just to see the massive jump that they've had over the last month as well has been fantastic. And then Whitley Bay and Borough Rangers, and I think kind of now with that gap open, they're realising now they might be too far, but it's all about finishing the high as they can between that pack, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is, and you've got to bear in mind as well. Obviously, there's a 14 playoff system being introduced into Division 1 this season. So obviously, as long as you're in that top 5, then you've got every chance from there, because it is, essentially one-off cup matches. I mean, and obviously we've just spoken there about how strong like Bishops and Shildon are, but obviously only one of them can actually win the league, and the other one's got to step up and perform in those playoffs, and there's no guarantees with that. And like you look at like some of the teams I just mentioned, I think Berkeley have probably say surprised everyone so far this season. They might not necessarily see it that way, but I think a newly promoted team into Division 1 sometimes like it can be a bit of a jump between Division 1 and Division 2, and it can take teams a bit of time to find their feet, but they've seemed to do it almost effortlessly, to be fair. Then obviously spoken then about West Auckland. I mean, a few weeks back, I was actually pretty surprised to see them so low down in the tables. I then watched early on against Shildon, and I thought they played pretty reasonably in that game, and I thought, yeah, they're still going to be tough to beat this season, and they'll definitely be up there. So it's maybe just been a bit of it's maybe just taken them a little bit of time, but I think we are maybe now slowly but surely starting to see the real West, I'd say.
Yeah, and just behind that, Paul, we have Heaton, who's sitting in 7th at the moment, but so many games in hand. And it's one of those things, if you win them games, obviously it could be sitting in 3rd place, but obviously you've got to get them games played and get them won. North Shields just behind that as well, and obviously losing a couple of players now to Blue Star. I think there might be a couple more following as well. And also a good month for Crook and Matty, who's normally on the show as well. 3 1-0 wins, which is really good at this level. You don't normally see it. Very good. I mean, what's your thoughts on them behind them? And obviously Shildon, Heaton and Redcar up next, some tough games for Crook, but it's a good challenge for them. If they can get through them, they could be pushing on as well, couldn't they?
The could. I mean, the teams you've just mentioned, Heaton have only lost 2 games all season. In all the games they've played, Crook's won 4 games on the spin, and then North Shields have got the 3rd best defensive record in the whole league. I think what Dan's just mentioned with the being 4 teams in the playoffs, it keeps teams from 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, even down to 12th in with a chance of getting in the playoffs, so it keeps their season alive, Borough Rangers in 6th, getting a little bit of a gap, but obviously with the 4 teams going in the playoffs, then teams below that's got everything to play for right at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be really competitive, isn't it? Look, something forward to, like, see that playoffs, it gives everyone a bit of hope as well. And just behind that, Gav, we have 10 to 15, the likes of Carlisle, Benfield, Redcar, Athletic, West Allotment, Gisborne and Wickham. And you're kind of naming them sides off there, and I think you look at least 2 or 3 of them sides at the start of the season, I think even they would say they're expected to be a bit higher up in the league, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think if we're looking at like at the start of the season, your Redcar, Athletics and Wickham, I would expect to kind of probably have a stronger second half of the season. I think Wickham have recruited well. They've got they're not a bad team. They've got some good players in there. I'm surprised in terms of kind of where they're at. Obviously they haven't been scoring very many, and they're conceding quite a few in terms of like West Allotment are always a team on the day could beat anybody in the league, and we've seen that kind of over the course of the last few seasons. Benfield, for what it's worth, I think Benfield are probably in that kind of area where you'd expect them to be, somewhere around like the top 10, if you like, in terms of how they're playing. And the likes of your Penriths and your Northallertons and your Gisboroughs. I know Gisborough, I think they got 3 points deducted off them, which would probably take them up to somewhere in terms of 11th, so a little bit harsh in terms of that. But from that point of view, I think that top end, they're going to start running away with it, and I think the gap will be too big and kind of too much to close. And I think the one that you've got to keep an eye on, like we've touched on it, will probably be Heaton Stan. If they can win them games in hand, they've got a very, very good side. And I think tonight they've made that signing. Is it Ryan Carr, who's went in from Blue Star, and he's a proper player, to be fair, along with some already proper players that they've got. So I expect them to kind of start pushing on through the league as well and be kind of in that playoffs come the end of the season.
No, definitely. And just behind that down as well, we have 16 down to 18, Penrith, Northallerton, Seaham. Penrith played 2 this month and obviously won both games at home against RCA and Heaton as well. But I think them home games are massive when the teams have got to go and travel that way on. And obviously it's a long travel with the players and that and stuff. And obviously picking up them home wins could be crucial. I know Northallerton's played 2 games, 2 losses, 7-0. 7-1 against Benfield as well. And Seaham just won league game, which was a 3-1 loss to West Auckland. And it's been a couple of games for Penrith, but the other teams behind that, you can see them starting to struggle a bit now, can't you?
Yeah, definitely can. Yeah, and what I've got to remember with Penrith, obviously, because they were having a lot of work done on the ground at the start of the season. They had to play pretty much all the games right up until not that long ago. All had to be away from home. So obviously they're now having to spend the rest of the season playing majority home games, which could well be something that works in their favour. And you look at it as well, like they've had they've picked up a couple of impressive results. Like I think they beat Heaton last weekend, didn't they? Which was maybe something that people maybe weren't expecting, but there you go, and all credit to them for that, because they're always the sort of team that people seem to tip to be in and around the relegation zone every year, but they always seem to find a way to claw themselves out of it. And I think historically over the years, the French field's been absolutely massive for them in that, because obviously we've got to remember this is the players in this league. They are like you and me. They'll have proper jobs and that, and sometimes they maybe can't commit to travelling over to Cumbria. I mean, and obviously it's the same for the Cumbrian teams when they're coming over here. But I do think Penrith will be all right. And as for Seaham, I do think there's, as I've probably said a couple of times, and as we seem to mention every single time we do this, there is a young squad, but it's a lot of energy and they do play good football. So I do still fancy them to pick up the necessary results to get out of it. But I think regardless, though, unfortunately for RCA and for Towler, I just think that gap now is just getting a bit too big. But all the same, like that, I think those two are due to play each other next Tuesday, actually. So that's a massive game in itself, isn't it?
It's a 9-pointer and minus 6-pointer. But looking at it, Paul, them teams down there now, I think it's giving them teams above them in that little pack that we just mentioned there, big confidence, because they know that looking at now, unless it's a miracle happen RCA, Towler, I mean, at the format they've had so far, 2 points between them out of 28 games. And I mean, like you say, the West Coast played each other, I think it was last Saturday or the Saturday before, and that got called off, and another played against Tuesday, which is a massive game. And if they're just one of those teams get that win, it's going to be huge for one of them to hopefully get a bit of confidence. But as a manager, if you were down there in that position, you're getting beat week and week out, some heavy results as well. How do you keep the lads going at them clubs?
It'll be tough. It'll be tough for any manager to try and keep them going. It's not nice getting beat every week when you're sort of going every Saturday, Tuesday, and the results aren't coming and the confidence is so low. It's just about trying to keep a bit sort of in the dressing room, trying to keep people's spirits up and that, and try to keep people's heads up and that. But it is going to be tough. I know RCA went through a bad spell last season, and they got a reprieve by not getting relegated. They brought a new manager in this season, and he signed a lot of players at the start of the season, and people thought, oh, well, RCA might improve from last year. It didn't work out, and a lot of them players have now left, and new managers come in, so it's another rebuild for them, but they're still struggling, and it's tough. And Towler, we played them in a pre-season friendly, and they had a lot of young lads. And in the Northern League, it's great getting the young lads through, but you do need that bit of experience as well. We found that at the start of the season. We had a lot of young lads, and it took us till sort of November to get 4 or 5 experienced lads in, and it helps in the dressing room as well as on the pitch. So it's just a case of training and sort of getting them to enjoy it and trying to keep the heads up in that. But it's tough. It is very, very tough.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just before we get on to the Division 2 as well, I just want to say a massive thank you everyone that's watching as always. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well. Get your comments in as well. We'll go through them as we go through the show. So on to Division 2 now, and back yourself, Paul, starting with the top 3, which personally looking at that at the moment, obviously you've got Blue Star, obviously will they settle down, obviously with the new management coming in, with players, there's going to be massive change on the pitch. I mean, what's your thoughts on the title race so far with Blythe in there in Benton as well now?
I think if you'd asked any manager in Northern League 2 at the start of the season who you think would be up there at the start of the season, you would have said Blythe, obviously with the players that they have brought in. They brought in some really good players. Blue Star, with the budget they've got and the players that they have brought in. Bedlington's always going to be up there. Then Horden have improved from last year, finished second, and they've brought some good players in. Then you've got a little gap, not a gap, but a group of teams who are all sort of on a par who are getting that top 5. So, I mean, the top 3 sort of speak for themselves, really, and they're starting to pull away from everybody.
No, it is, isn't it? And Dan, just behind that little pack as well, the 4th to 6th, as you mentioned there, Horden, Chelsea Street Town is still ticking away very nicely as well, and Yarm breaking into that group as well from 7th as well. I mean, what's your thoughts on them teams there? Do you think they'll stay there and push on for them playoff positions?
Well, there's still a very, very long way to go in there, and I just think maybe over the last few weeks or so there's been I think with Chestler Street and with Yarm as well. I think it's just about trying to find that consistency, I'd say, because I know obviously Chestler Street, I think they had a bit of a wobble against Sinners. I think it was they lost that game at home, which is possibly a game you'd maybe think they'd get at least something out of, but didn't happen like that, and that's football for you. That's what can happen sometimes. And then obviously I watched Yarm at FC Hartlepool. They lost that particular game 2-1, but also as Gav was saying earlier on, obviously FC Hartlepool are a very decent team. It's a very tough place to go, but like all those teams we're mentioning are like picking up results, maybe sometimes even somewhat unexpectedly. So if they can keep doing that, then you know, like there's nothing at all to suggest that there won't be up there come the end of the season. As we say, if you're in that top 5, then it is literally just one like massively important cup competition from that point.
It isn't it? Yeah, totally. And Gav, just behind that, getting some more cracking side. I'm really enjoying Division 2 this season. Easton games in hand, some good signings last month as well. FC Hartlepool, like you see, a very strong side, and Williamson's Phoney pushing on as well. I mean, what's your thoughts on them few sides around that area as well?
I think from our perspective, we've kind of played 18 games, and we've played the likes of Billy Synthonia, we've played FC Hartlepool, we've played Bolton, we've played Easton Colliery, played Yarm, and you know what? There was not one game where you can sit back and go, you know what, it was an easy win. Every single game that you play in the Northern League, especially in that second division, it's like you've either got to be at it, and if you're not at it, then they'll cause you a problem. If you look at the games, like for instance that we've lost this season, for instance, we've lost 3, and we've lost against the likes of Jarrah. And don't get us wrong, Jarrah have thoroughly deserved that on the night on the day. We played against Yarm at Yarm, and they took an early goal against us, and basically defended for their lives after that. So it's the type of league in the Northern League second division this season where like you kind of go anywhere expecting to win a game. You've kind of, I know it sounds cliche by saying it, but you have absolutely got to earn the right. And I think ultimately, if you're not there and you're not at it, and you've got to kind of, and you think it's just going to be a walk in the park, then those teams that are currently sitting in that kind of 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th spot, and even down to kind of your Eschwinans and stuff like that, your Newcastle Universities, let's face it, like we got beat off them in the League Cup last week, and Newcastle University got beat off them 2-1. And again, they were good value for it. So I go back to kind of echoing what Dan says. Like, we're not even halfway through the season yet, and I think anybody on any given day is capable of taking 3 points off everybody in that league. So it'll be the teams that get into that playoffs will be the teams that are consistent. And what I mean by that is they don't drop silly points. They're consistent in terms of the way that they're playing. They're always looking to kind of win the matches, kind of upgrading in terms of their recruitment policies. And if they're consistent, I think you can very easily kind of establish yourself in that kind of top 6 or 7 in terms of that league very, very easily. But if you're not, and you're that team that sometimes you're great and sometimes you're not so good, then you'll find yourself kind of sitting in that middle section, lower half of the league, kind of frustrated, if I'm being brutally honest.
No, definitely it is. And then just beyond that as well, Paul, 10th Bolden. And I think the manager and chairman had a few issues. Obviously, the chairman leaving early what he expected to be, and managers following, and new managers coming in and stuff like that. It's who they can keep a hold of now, because I know they were doing really well this season. Obviously, Levi Collins up front, banging in goals for fun. I know I was speaking to someone last week, he said obviously there's a amount of people that's put the 7-day rule in for him, but because he bikes everywhere, I think that's why he stays at Bull, because it's right on the corner where he's living from, and stuff like that. But you've got them in there, you've got Wrighton obviously as well, Thornaby. I mean, what's your thoughts on them few sides just around that mid-table area?
Bolden started off the season really, really well. And as you've just mentioned, I don't know what's gone on behind the scenes with the manager, chairman, etc. But it seemed to have gone a little bit downhill. The new manager's come in, obviously he'll want to bring his own players in. In terms of Levi, I think everyone in the league's tried to sign him before, but he just won't be Bolden for whatever reason. If that's right about the bike, then good luck to him, you know. As Gav says, consistency is massive in this league. You look at Wrighton, they've won 9 and lost 11, haven't drew a game. So, as he says, you're either on it or you're off it. You know, and the same's no consistency there, because when they're on it, they're a really good team. Then Thornaby, we played them at the weekend, and again, they were a good side on the day. But again, they're a little bit inconsistent. I don't think they've drawn many games. So it is that consistency. You've got your top 4 who are very consistent, then from sort of 5th to 8th. Yeah. They win 3 games, lose 1, win 2 games, lose 1, and then any of the next bottom 8, they sort of win, lose, and there's no consistency. And that's why teams are in the positions they are in the bottom half.
Yeah, a lot of change in there, isn't there? You can see just behind that position as well, Dan, you've got the likes of Jarrah sitting in 13th for the 14th, and Eshwin, who's had a little bit of run lately as well, pushing on. But you've kind of looked at the team as always one team that will be sitting in mid-table, even just below, and they'll just go on this mad run. You touch on the playoffs all the time, but there's always that one team who really pushes to get close, if not get that final spot. And you never know, could be one of those teams, couldn't it, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely could. And I think those teams you mentioned, they're often maybe somewhat overlooked. Like when you're like going into new seasons, like they're not really sort of heavily like talks about in terms of doing something at the top end. But as you say, all it needs is to like string two maybe 3 wins in a row, and all of a sudden, like it could be like the team that you thought was maybe going. Whose season you thought maybe just sort of pale into a bit of like mid-table, not much happening, could all of a sudden be right up there, and that's the thing. Like I think in the Northern League, like you have got to be like pretty much all aspects of the game on it, like especially in Division 2, as we talked about, where it is an exceptionally like tough division, and you get the odd surprise result. I mean, Christ, Blue Star were 3-0 up against Yarm, weren't they? And then ended up losing 4-3 later on. So it just shows you you've got to be on it for 90 minutes, and you certainly can't underestimate anyone.
No, definitely not. I mean, I think that just shows just behind that, Gavin, there's a little gap that opens up between that next little pack, the 16th, with West End Uni and Billingham Town as well. But there's any teams that kind of we mentioned down there that you've kind of played for, kind of what they're doing down there, who you've really been impressive on the day?
Well, I think Esh are not a bad side. Prudder, I think will be okay, and they'll get out of it. It's not a nice place to go in the winter periods, and I think they cope really well. I'm sure from Sunderland's West End perspective. We've heard from Paul, he's obviously brought in a few players and got a bit more experience. And when you talk to people about Sunderland West End and when you see them play, they speak very, very highly. So I expect them to kind of make that step up in terms of the table. And I think Newcastle Uni, they always start off poor, right? Because it's kind of they're waiting for the boys to come back
on the holidays.
On the 6 weeks holidays and all that sort of stuff, and they always have that spell at the end of half term and they go back away again. But then kind of after the Christmas period, like if they kind of get to the point where they start the season the way they kind of are in the middle of the season, they'll probably be up there challenging right away from kind of day one, minute one. But must be so frustrating for them because they're just waiting for the kind of the boys to come back and kind of start playing. And I've got a big kind of big respect for Chesterley Street United. I think what they do, what Gambo does there, and what Colin does there, and the boys is superb. And I think they always come strong second half of the season because the kind of the new lads that come in, the new crop, if you like, they're their first year kind of scholars. Come in, they get to learn their trade, they understand the Northern League, and then all of a sudden they think, hold on a minute, I'm now 6 months, 7 months older. I've done my strength and conditioning because they're training full time all the time. And kind of come January onwards, I think if you remember last season, I think they were unbeaten in about 10 or 11 games. And if the season had extended a little bit further, I think they could have probably nicked into the playoffs because nobody wanted to play them, especially when they were playing. I think they were sharing the ground with Sunderland West End on that 4G, and we went there and they absolutely battered us 4-1, and again, good value for it. And you're sitting there going, these are just young kids, but they were young kids who kind of had spent 6 months kind of learning about the Northern League, and at the end of it probably thought, actually, you know what, there's not really so much I need to be worried about now from a physicality perspective. So I'd expect them to start climbing the table as well. But I think they say some good sides in there, and I think going back to Dan's point, you string 2 or 3 results together and you get 9 to 12 points, and all of a sudden you're looking up instead of looking down, and I think that's the key to it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's like yourself, Paul. I mean, you're sitting in 16th at the moment. You kind of look up and you're 3 wins away from 9th place, and you kind of look down and obviously you're 100% safe with what's going on down at the bottom, I would say. But I mean, with the lads at the moment, do you kind of break the games down into blocks and kind of set expectations, or do you kind of sit down and say, right, the next half of the league, this is what we're going to do? How do you kind of work that with the lads?
Well, it's obviously a cliche, you take one game at a time, but I mean, me and James would do look at a few games ahead and say, right, can we get 4 points out the next 3 games, or can we get 5 points out the next 4 games, what have you? But again, it's inconsistency with ourselves. You know, we played Ashwin at home, we beat them 5-0. We played them 2 weeks later, and they beat us 2-0. You know, we went on sort of 5-game unbeaten run towards the start of the season, then 5 games without a win, you know, with 4 defeats. So we're very inconsistent at the minute. We went 2 wins on the trot and then 2 defeats on the trot. So it's just about getting that little bit consistency for ourselves. I mean, we'll always be looking out over our shoulders until we're sort of 10, 12 points clear, you know, because as you say, with 3 points for a win, two wins for any team could push you right up there, you know. So, I mean, it's like I say, it's just keeping everyone on the toes, hopefully the squad injury free, and then just pushing on, obviously, from Christmas onwards.
Oh, definitely. And just behind that, Dan, I mean, 2 times teams that I watched last season, one being Chester Street United down at home, plays some great football down there. And obviously, Redcar Town, I've seen them play twice at the home against Chester Street United and Sunderland West End. And they played very well as well. And I mean, looking at them 2 sides now, Redcar sitting 19th, only played 15 games so far, but just the 1 league win against Chester Street United. And remember, in Chester Street United, 3 league games and 3 losses. The 1 against Redcar, 5-0 against Easton, 6-0 against Wright. I know we had the lads on from Chester Street United last week, and they kind of talked about sometimes you need that experience, but because the way it's set up, it is all the young lads have got to learn. And I think it's what they touched on is because when they're playing at West End last season on the 3G pitch, or the 4G pitch, that's what they trained on throughout the week. So the lads were so used to getting the work done on the training, the quick, fast and passing football, going to receptor on the same type of fish, and paying literally the people off the park where they just kind of do that on the grass this season. And it's hard seeing them teams down there, and like you say, the 5-0, the 6-0 against the young lads. It's not going to help sometimes the mentality, is it?
Yeah, what we've also got to remember about Chester Street United as well is they have just had a pretty mad FA Youth Cup run, which obviously got to take the hat off for, and maybe maybe that's sort of played a bit of a part for them so far, but you can understand that because we are talking about a national competition. There's money on the line and big opportunities to play against big clubs and what have you. But yeah, I think as for Edgar Town, it just seems for them they just can't get a game on for love of the money at the minute. I mean, there's been a couple of times I've been meaning to go down there over the last couple of weeks, and it's been called off. So I think I mean, don't get me wrong, nobody's having an easy time at the minute trying to get a game on. I mean, and obviously if you're West End or if you're Penrith or if you're Borough Rangers or someone like that, it's maybe not so bad because you've got a 3G pitch, and that's obviously and that's maybe something that can work in your favour because obviously in the long run you're not maybe going to have quite as many games to catch up on, and maybe a few away games, but certainly not to the extent that some teams are unfortunately going to be faced with come the end of the season. So I don't believe in false positions or anything like that, but I think maybe once Record Town are playing again and what have you, then you might sort of see them propel up the table a little bit. So it's going to be really interesting to see, though. I mean, obviously they have got the games in hand, but at the same time you've got to perform in them, haven't you?
Yeah, 100%. And the teams below that, Gav, you've got obviously 21st Washington, 22nd Brandon, who's really struggling at the moment. Washington 2 lost in November to Ashton Chester Street Town, 1 home game. I think it's CS in September, which is crazy when you look at it. And Brandon as well, that obviously very big problems down there. 12-9-1 round the hub as well. And I watched them round the hub a few weeks ago, and Paul telling you, I mean, in that level, Paul was saying you've got to go out and try and beat by double figures because people expect this. If you just get the 1-0 or 2-0 win, they'll kind of have a go at you. But if you only score 6 or 7, you should have 9 or 12. And it's crazy the pressure that teams are put on now where I've got to go and batter this Brandon United side. But when I watched them, it was like almost watching, the best way to describe it as a Sunday League game where you've got a Premier League side against a Division 6 or 7 side where they turn up just think, oh, we're going to get beat again. And it's not nice to see it in this level of football, is it?
It's not. And you know what? Hats off to Brandon, and hats off to the players and the management team because they turn up every week and to be getting, with all due respect, they've been getting spanked every week in terms of the way that they've been playing. They've conceded 88 goals in 19 games, and it must be demoralising. But to be fair to them, they turn up and they're giving it the best that they possibly can. I know they turned up to our place and we beat them 11-0 and had a man sent off, and then the referee sent them another man off, and they were playing with 9 men, and it just spoiled the game, right? And even we're shouting from the sideline, let ref behave yourself. It's hard enough for them to start without you. And to be fair, he could have given a yeller and kind of left at that and a stern warning, or even asked them to make a sub. But it must be horrible to kind of turn up and kind of and feel like you're getting beat before. It's just a case of how many. Washington, they're going to have an issue with their ground. They always have done. They had a big problem last season. They played 17 games. Yes, you can look at it and go, if they win the games in hand, they can get out of that. But every week that goes by, and every week that goes by in terms of bad weather, it's just another cancellation or another postponement, and they'll end up playing 3-4 games a week at the back end of the season, and that'll take its toll. So don't want to sound kind of derogatory, but Brandon and Washington probably look like the two that would go down, and then from that perspective, the rest of the boys from the 3 or 4 above them, I think they'll also be capable of getting out of that as well. But it's tough, and it's easy to knock a team when they're down, and I don't want to do that. So I think from Brandon's perspective, I just want to say to them, great attitudes and superb and well done, and like you say, kind of try and get through the season and hopefully try and build, because they've had the problems, and it'll be good to kind of get through that and hopefully get back to what they're capable of doing, because normally they're a good side and they've got some good players, but they're just struggling a little bit at the minute.
Yeah, it was such a shame. So a couple of seasons ago, Matty was obviously, he brought back a lot of the local community and the youth teams started to come back through, coming to watch the games, and had a lot of local lads playing for Brandon, which I think it always helps at any level. You get them local lads in, it just means that little bit more on a Saturday to them. And they were doing really well, like you say, just over the last few seasons, or the last couple of seasons even. Obviously, the players and managers just hasn't been right. I know actually we were supposed to have a Christmas cracker show coming up with Steve Pickering was supposed to be coming on for our final show. It was supposed to be the box office event, but it hasn't. I think it's all gone wrong. It hasn't getting back to us, so I think that one's being pulled. But that would have been good to get the insights of what happened there. But getting on to the final few questions of the night after finishing chatting about Division 2, and starting with yourself, Dan. I mean, just obviously with the games that's coming up and all, how busy it's going to be with the Boxing Day games as well. I mean, how many games have you got penciled in now between now and the new year?
Across the board, I've got like quite a bit penciled in for December, and obviously following Gateshead everywhere. I mean, I've got transport booked to go to Woking this weekend, and there's obviously no guarantees that game's going to go ahead, but you'll just have to keep fingers crossed there. In terms of the Northern League, I think I've got Gisborough against Crook penciled in the League Cup, which is going to be exciting. I think if it's on, I'll 99% sure I'll go to that RCA against Towler game on Tuesday night, because it's just I just think it'd just be such an interesting game to go to. Obviously, you've got two teams that have only, as I said, collected 2 points between them all season. Obviously, one of them at least has got to change that. Whether that be one of them getting the first win or whether it ends in a draw, what have you. Yeah, that's another one I've got coming up. But after that, it's just maybe I'd say a bit of a mix of National League North. I think 1 or 2 games in the Northern Premier League as well. So I've got quite a nice little blend coming up. So yeah, really looking forward to it. And I've got to say, as in terms of what I've seen, what I've been to so far this season, I've got to say it's been a really, really enjoyable season up to now. I've definitely enjoyed making my videos again. I think last year I was maybe wasn't quite as enjoyable for one reason or the other, but definitely feels maybe slowly but surely getting back to sort of my best content now.
And keeping up some really good work. And Paul, yourself, I mean, just chatting about these Boxing Day games, I mean, what's your thoughts on the games being on the Boxing Day now? And I mean, obviously trying to get a crowd down for it would be huge, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, yeah. I mean, I quite like the Boxing Day games. As I mentioned at the start of the programme, it gets people out of the house, people who's got hangovers that might want a bit of fresh air, watch a game of football. I know Colin's trying to get the game on a bit earlier, around about 11 o'clock. Rather than wait till 3 o'clock. But whether that happens or not, I'm not sure. But again, if it is at 3 o'clock, Sunderland's away, so it would be nice to get a few fans down and have a good crowd there.
No, definitely. I know I'm just waiting for the kick-off time, so I'm going to try and get some flyers printed out. I'm going to get the bands, get them around the hub, get them around the estate, get them all pushed through the doors. So we're going to try and get 200 plus down on Boxing Day. We can do it. No problem. You got yourself, obviously. A long way to go, Gav, obviously at the minute, but I mean it's always a good place to be sitting top of the league. I mean, if you can keep that going over, like say, this Christmas period, then the whole of winter times and stuff, it'd be great to be back involved in Division 1 if you get that far, wouldn't it?
It would be, but you know what? Not going to get carried away. We've got 8 games in December, James. So, with all due respect, it's going to be a big one, and then we've got 7 games in January. And then the thing that I always keep an eye on, like if you look at our running, Newcastle Blue Star, Bedlington, Newcastle Blue Star, Horden, and FC Hartlepool. So with all due respect, it's it couldn't be any harder if it tried. So from that point of view, it's like I'm hoping that we've had a fantastic season and we're going into them last 4 games where we're safe and we're just needing 1 or 3 points. But like I said, it's going to come thick and fast. 8 games in December is huge. Starting with obviously the tough one on Saturday against Bishops, who are absolutely flying in the first division. But it's a free hit for us, right? I think everyone's like, that's the end of Blythetown's FA Vars run, and you know what? We'll see how it is. I don't think they'll fancy coming to our gaff because I watched them when they played at their place on the Bowling Green, and let's see what they're like in a little bit of a churned up pitch and all the rest of it. So we'll see. But they're a very, very good side. And then we've got a really hard game on Tuesday night against Morpeth at Morpeth on their 4G in the Senior Cup. And it's like, so kind of Saturday and Tuesday, that starts off kind of, then we've got 6 games after that and Bedlington on Boxing Day. So it'll be a really busy kind of Christmas period for the boys, and we've got a decent squad. We've got a big squad, and everyone's like, "Oh, you've recruited somebody else," and you're like, "Yeah, you've got to, because the second half of the season, when you're playing 3 games a week, you've got to rely on 22, 23 players, and you kind of just keep kind of trying to expect the same 15, 16 to keep doing the results for you and keep getting the right sort of results for you, because it just doesn't work that way. And I think that's the problem we had last season. We didn't have enough kind of strength and depth where we were then kind of flogging the same lads, and they were like, you know what, put a fork in us, I'm done. I'm like, I kind of give you anything more, even if I wanted to try. So hopefully this year we've learned from it and we've got a good squad. But you know what, so is everybody else around us, especially on that top 5 or 6. They've all got kind of 17, 18, 19 really, really good footballers. So we'll see how it goes.
No, excellent. You say lots to look forward to. I know we're going to have a little break on the channel in December, so it'll be nice to come back in January and talk about that January period, because I would imagine that league table, what they're looking at now, a few positions will be a lot of changes over the next, like you say, the amount of games that's going to be packed in, whether to permit it, obviously, as well. But,
you'll be exactly the same as where it is now, because nobody's played any football.
Thank you very much, lads, for coming on. And like you say, we wish you both the club's the very best of luck. And Dan, keep up the great work as always on the channel. Get across and subscribe to Dan's channel as well. But like I say, a lot coming up on the channel before our little winter break as well. I mean, Sunday we've got 2 shows. 7:15, we've got Addiction and Recovery with Matty Arnold's coming on to share his story as well, which I think is very brave to actually come on and chat about obviously the addiction that he had and obviously the recovery that he's had as well, which is going great. 8:30, we've got the Newcastle review show, which is looking back at the games in November, talking about that VR decision against PSG. I think that'll be the talking point of the night. And Monday, we've got Looking Back with Dan Kirkup and Dean Nicholson, a little joint one there. I think it's going to be full of laughter and plenty stories on that one, I've heard. The Tuesday as well, we've got the Newcastle United Women November review show at 10:00 night, and then we're hoping to get a former Newcastle player on for the Wednesday show around the year as well. Like I say, we've got 28 days without a live show, plenty still pre-recordings, but time to have a little break now with the family over Christmas, try and get a few games and a few trips away with the family as well. But again, thank you everyone that's been watching throughout the night. We always appreciate your support as always, and hope you enjoy the rest of your night as well.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.